All right, looks like we are good to go on YouTube. Good to go on Facebook. Welcome in, everybody. Connor and coverage here, recapping Tuesday night. Just finished with Kirby Smart and a couple players a few minutes ago. Took last week off. It was election night. I'm man enough to say sometimes life there are things more important than football, so I didn't really feel right going on that day. And that's going to end any and all talk about the election and the results of it. We're here to talk about something much worse that happened this past week, and that would be what happened to the Georgia football team on Saturday against Florida. Mike Mazzell, good to see you. Welcome in, everybody. We'll give everyone a minute or two to get acclimated, to get back in here. Come on, Major, we suck. Oh, well, yeah. Saturday was bad. Saturday was real bad. And I know it was only a 16-point game. If Mark Webb makes a play there and it's a pick six, it's closer. Georgia did not deserve to win that game. And in all honesty, if Dan Mullen, and I think they wanted to run up the score Florida did on Saturday and just couldn't. That game, it was not a 16-point deficit. I'm sure many of you would agree that it did not feel like a 16-point loss. It felt much more than that. And in all honesty, it is. It was just not a good performance. It was one of the worst, in my opinion, it's one of the worst games Kirby Smart has had even as a head coach, just as a head coach in terms of getting out coached. Dan Mullen just got the better of him. I know some people will say injuries. Jamal Major brings that up. Woody Tripp on YouTube, good to see you. But injuries aren't the biggest concern for me from that game. I actually thought, especially in the second half, Georgia sort of started to figure some things out. But the quarterback play, which we're obviously going to get into, and I've got a couple stories on it this week, both on 2020 and the 2021 look at the position. Injuries was just not, to me, they're not the biggest story there. I did see Keith Foles. Will we get to play Saturday at Missouri? As of right now, the latest, Eli Drinkwitz, the Missouri head coach, had a press conference at the exact same time that Kirby Smart did. They only have one positive test, I should say. But due to contact tracing, it's impacted a position. So Missouri's going to test again. We'll find out more about that impact and just how dire things are with Missouri. But as of right now, that game is still on. The SEC did postpone 3 different games today. Alabama, LSU, 6 o'clock CBS game will be postponed. The Texas A&M Tennessee game will be moved to December 12th, and the Auburn Mississippi State game will also be moved to December 12th. So a little COVID update there. Kirby said today he very much hopes that Georgia gets to play this game, and I sort of share in this sentiment where Georgia needs a game on Saturday simply because to just get right, to figure itself out, to get things moving in the right direction once again, and because as most of the commenters here would agree, it's just stewing on this loss doesn't really help or do anybody any good. So personally, I'm hoping Georgia gets a chance to play this weekend and just gets a chance to move on and flush that game and go forward with, as of right now, in my educated guess, will potentially be a different starting quarterback. Stetson Bennett, he did not practice yesterday. He did not practice again today. It's worth monitoring with that AC joint injury where he is sort of at. But Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck, and JT Daniels all took reps with the first team today. Georgia, I believe, is looking and trying to find who that best guy is for both this season and going forward with what this team is going to be. Because to be quite frank, in my opinion, it is all about 2021 now. The 2020 season, sure, you can try and go 8-2 and send the seniors, and the guys who this is their last year here on the way out with a strong season, potentially get into a New Year's Six Bowl, Peach Bowl, potentially I think would be very attractive for Georgia. But Georgia, as of right now, opens the 2021 season against Clemson. Clemson knows who its quarterback is going to be in that game. It won't be Trevor Lawrence. It'll be DJ Uiagalelei, who threw for 782 yards in his past 2 games filling in for Lawrence. And he's going to be very good. I'm not one of those national media dorks that's saying he's already better than Trevor Lawrence, because he is not. But DJ Uiagalelei is going to be a very, very good quarterback, and there's no real drop-off there from Clemson. You look at Alabama, there's no drop-off statistically from Tua Tagovailoa to Mac Jones. You look at Ohio State, they go from Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields. There's no drop-off there. Georgia loses Jake Fromm, who was a good quarterback, but I think we'd all agree no one would say he was great, and no one would say he was an ultimate difference-making program, difference-making quarterback. And Georgia just offensively has fallen off a cliff, especially when it comes into the passing game. I would say, actually, the receivers this year, obviously, they're a little bit dinged up right now. But from what we've seen with them and what Todd Monken has been able to do to get those guys open, I actually think I've been pretty impressed with some of that and what we've seen. Obviously, not having Dominic Blaylock, not having George Pickens the last 2 games, I think that hurts, obviously. But, now no Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint going forward. But I've sort of liked what I've seen from the skill position players. I know somebody mentioned Zamir White earlier. Yeah, 75-yard run to open the game, 2 straight games with over 100 yards. I know some people say, well, why didn't Georgia run the ball more on Saturday? Well, it's because we're running in 8-9-man boxes, and to beat elite teams and beat good teams, you have to be able to throw the football, and Florida dared Georgia to do that. Georgia's receivers got open on the back end, and ultimately they just did not do it, and that's more than anything why I think Georgia lost was just injuries. Georgia's hoping to get Richard LeCounte back. They're probably going to get Jordan Davis back at some point. I don't know about this week. They're going to get healthier on defense. And honestly, Georgia doesn't play a good offense the rest of the season. I expect them defensively to look more like they did against non-Alabama and Florida teams than what they did on Saturday. The defense, I think, will be fine. They still recruit very well there. And long term, Kirby, he's going to have to make some slight adjustments going up against those elite teams. But, for example, Tyreek Stevenson on Saturday is tracking Kyle Pitts perfectly, step for step, stride for stride with him. He's about to go up and make what will probably be an interception, and he slips and falls down, and Kyle Pitts turns it into a 35-yard reception. Those are just sort of the things where, sometimes it goes the wrong way. I think eventually – when Georgia gets a chance to get back out there, its defense will be fine. And I think in one instance, the offense has to help the defense. The offense, especially in that first half against Florida after those first 2 drives, Georgia was putting its defense back out there on the field. Georgia needed to have the ability to sustain drives, to match Florida point for point, and sort of keep Florida's offense off the field, and they just didn't do that. And ultimately, you sort of see them wear out over the course of that first half before resetting themselves coming out of the half. So ultimately, and I see all the comments here, Zach Hicks, Carson Bexer, JT, Gabe Moy, please let us see Daniels. It comes, if there's going to be a change, it comes to the quarterback position. I know, I believe last time I was on here, there were a lot of people calling, hey, let's check out Dwan Mathis. Let's see what he had. And I know there are those people out there. He could very well start on Saturday. It would not surprise me. He has been the number 2 quarterback for Georgia for this entire season, really. But I don't believe that Dwan Mathis is the answer. I think you can look at the Arkansas game and the Florida game, and I know some will say sample size. I think he's had, I believe, 10 drives now as Georgia's quarterback. Some of the stuff there. And, the accuracy, the overthrows is one thing, but even, again, you saw – there was a chance for him to, on a 3rd down, to pick up a 1st down. He went out short of the sticks again. But then on 4th down, he has no problem plowing over a defender. It's stuff like that is still concerning to me with Mathis, along with just the accuracy. There were some guys that were open, and Demetrius Robertson one, sure, D-Rob should have made that play. But just some of the stuff, I don't know how correctable and how fixable some of that stuff is. So it comes down to JT and Carson. And to be honest, as I said on Dog Nation Daily today, Philip Hambry, JT Daniels knows the playbook. It's not an issue of knowing the playbook. I think the reason we haven't seen him is he wasn't cleared to start the season. Stetson played very well against Auburn and Tennessee and did not merit forcing a change there at that point in time. They wanted to give Stetson more and more first-team reps to get him more comfortable with this offense. And so because of that, JT Daniels worked with the scout team as a way to sort of stay ready, get rep ready, be game ready, even though they weren't running, Daniels, when he's on the scout team, he's not running Georgia's offense. So with all that, and Kirby even said this, it's not, to our understanding right now, it is not a knee issue. Kirby has said that. There's a 247 Sports piece last week that said the knee is not a concern. The knee does not seem to be a concern. It is not limiting his mobility. So, and quite frankly, if there were ever a week to see JT Daniels, it'd be this week. It's Georgia again. They're building towards 2021 now. It's a game where Stetson Bennett is not healthy, so if you want an excuse to make a quarterback change, you have one sort of built in there. Even though I think a quarterback change is probably needed at this point, regardless. So Nitro Z brings up put James Cook at QB. I mean, with that's how. That's where it is. Brett Oglesby asked Connor, why are we not even hearing Kirby mention Carson Beck with the scout team? Carson's a freshman. It's his first year playing big-time college football. I think you have to make a choice there. Would you rather have JT getting those reps and staying somewhat ready to go, or would you rather have Carson getting those reps? I think that for this year, it's probably more beneficial for JT to be that guy. And so I think, the plan was never going to be to play Carson this year. And really only the quarterback situation being as bad as it is has people even mentioning him as a potential prospect this year. I would expect it to be JT before it would be Carson on Saturday. And I'm not even 100% sure that it is going to be JT. I think there's a very realistic world where Juwan is starting on Saturday once again for Georgia for the second time this season. So what about the 10-minute mark here? This is Connor in coverage. We're sort of recapping where things are with the Georgia football program right now. They lost pretty badly, 44-28 to Florida this past weekend. They play Missouri this coming weekend, and as of right now, that game is still on. There was a COVID outbreak. Again, Halloween is very popular in college campuses. I think you're sort of seeing that this week. LSU Alabama has been postponed. Mississippi State Auburn has been postponed. Texas A&M Tennessee has been postponed. Came out today that Missouri had a player test positive, and due to contact tracing, Missouri has been impacted at a position. They're going to continue testing and find out just the severity of one positive test on this team. But as of right now, Georgia is still set to play Missouri at 12 o'clock on Saturday. I think just about everyone here would go ahead and say that we all want to see Georgia play, just not even so much, because it is college football, but just a chance to move on from that Florida game and sort of see what you have going forward. I did see Philip Hamby ask, Pickens portal rumors true? No, he's not in the transfer portal yet. If he were, it'd be widely reported and we'd know about it. We'd be talking about it. Hasn't played the last 2 weeks because of what has been called an upper extremity injury. I think you can look in the past. There have been some incidents with Pickens that would maybe potentially lead people to believe that he might be a guy that would want to leave Georgia. And obviously he has had some off the field issues. He was suspended for the first half of the Georgia Tech game last year. And obviously in the second half of that game, he gets into a fight. So ultimately right now, Pickens is still with the team. As of right now, he's practiced the last 2 days. I would think we're going to see him on Saturday play once again. Hopefully that's with JT Daniels at quarterback. That's speaking more hopefully here than actual rooted in reporting right now. We still don't know much about where that might be. Yeah, Stephen Wainwright brings up that Pickens' mom on social media yesterday sort of dispelled those notions. So ultimately what I want to see on Saturday, I want to see one, I want to see JT Daniels out there. I think that has to sort of be the guy. I think two, if Pickens is able to play and you have Keiris Jackson, Jermaine Burton, and Pickens, along with James Cook, Trey McKitty, Darnell Washington, that's a nice complement of weapons there. Zamir White is probably the one player who I can say positive things about right now on the offensive side of the ball. But James Cook has played well as well when he's been given opportunities to do so. With Zamir, I wrote about him. I talked about him a little bit today. He's finally starting to put together those big plays that had sort of been missing. Yes, we know he can be the bruiser and grind out 4 or 5 yard carries at a time, but the Kentucky game, he had a big touchdown run. The Florida game, opening play, he had a big touchdown run. That sort of long track speed, I think, is something we're finally starting to see get back from him. He'd said a few weeks ago at a press conference he actually felt faster than he did in high school. And ultimately, I do think that, like Dog, Missouri is not very close to canceling due to COVID. If you're seeing that on YouTube, that is not the case right now. They as of right now have one positive case and are contact tracing. That not quite there yet. It's something to be aware of. The SEC has not said anything yet as far as that. So, Philip Hudson on Facebook, he says, I'm tired of hearing about the upcoming recruiting classes. Something we talked about on Dog Nation Daily today. It can be really nice, and it's probably fair to say that Georgia is just a quarterback away from figuring all this out. But what have you seen from Georgia under Kirby Smart and the way that this position has been handled gives you confidence that they're going to find that guy? They had that guy in Justin Fields, and again, I'm just going to establish this right here. Jake Fromm was the better player in 2018. He gave Georgia a better chance to win in 2018. At the time, that was true, and that is still true today. However, and again, this is unfortunately the benefit of hindsight. I understand why Smart made the decision. It just ended up not working out, and Fields should have been the guy to start there in 2018. Yes, you sacrificed winning in 2018, but I don't know if anybody was beating Clemson in the national championship game. And conversely, I don't know if anyone was beating LSU. I don't think anyone was beating LSU last year. But with Justin Fields on this team, and I certainly think that with Fields on this team, Georgia's probably either Alabama or Georgia are the best teams in the country. So, that's just sort of unfortunately where it is. You bring in a guy like JT Daniels. You have the Jamie Newman thing, which pretty clearly didn't work out. And you saw it today. Senior Bowl puts out a graphic of him in a Georgia jersey. Georgia fans rightfully say he shouldn't be wearing that. He never played a snap here competitively. Newman then tweets out, quote, retweets him in a Wake Forest jersey. I think that's sort of, Kirby was asked about him tonight. Kirby says he hasn't heard from him recently as far as talking to him since he left back in early September. You can read into what you want to on the Jamie Newman status. That thing just pretty clearly never worked out for whatever reason. JT Daniels, obviously the knee, I think, was an injury and impacting early in the season, and ultimately we'll see where he goes if he plays. I hope that he gets a chance to play this Saturday, so Georgia at the very least can find out what it has in him. So, James Leonard Brown, JT might be that guy. If he comes out and plays well and lights it up, while some will say, well, why weren't you playing him earlier? Ultimately, I think JT coming in and playing well still can mean quite a bit to this Georgia program, especially if he is given he has the potential to return next year and play for Georgia. And then looking into 2021, you're bringing in Brock Vandagriff, 5-star quarterback. Jerry Palm. One thing on Beck, Fromm and Beck are very different quarterbacks. Fromm was a much higher rated quarterback as a prospect coming in. He was a top 50 overall prospect. Carson Beck not sort of in that same vein. And again, as I'm about to make my point here with Brock Vandagriff, not all freshman quarterbacks are created equal. For every Trevor Lawrence you see out there, or even a DJ Uiagalelei, even among the 5-star quarterbacks, you look at a guy like Bo Nix. I don't think until maybe the LSU game, his last time out, any Georgia fan was really, or any Auburn fan was really satisfied with what they had in Nix. And he was a 5-star quarterback, number one dual threat quarterback in his recruiting class. So with that, placing all your expectations on a freshman, sure, it's worked out a couple of times in recent memory, but that hasn't always been the case. And if you put too much on a young player early, sometimes they just don't ever recover from it. And while I have high expectations for Beck, I think ultimately what could be the best situation for both him and potentially the Georgia program at large is Daniels coming in at the end of the season, playing well, earning that starting role going into 2021, Kirby committing to Daniels being the starter in the offseason, because I do actually think having a sort of an open competition when it was widely assumed that Newman was going to be the guy played a role in Newman ultimately not being the guy there. So you have that factoring in as well. And Georgia opens up its season next year, as of right now, against Clemson in Charlotte. And I don't know if that Clemson defense, which got pretty tossed up against Clemson, against Notre Dame past that, I don't know if that's what you want to throw out there. If that's the game you want to throw Brock Vandagriff into the fire against, because that's going to be asking a whole lot from him. So, again, 2021, to me, it's all about 2021 now. It's all about your future. The 2020 season, sure, you can go 8-2 and you can go play in the Peach Bowl and win that, and that's great. But as Kirby Smart, I asked him tonight, even just, what's your message to recruits after this? It's not bevied in wins and losses at this point. Georgia needs to find out who its quarterback is and try and figure out, is that guy on the roster right now? Is that guy ultimately Brock Vandagriff? Do they need to go try to hit the transfer portal again and find a guy that can come in and play for them? Because there has still been a lot of successful players to come from that route. So, Jacob O'Neal, he brings up Clemson's defense will be better. So, Jeffrey Poole, Georgia needs a QB. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, and Noah Sheldon brings up, hey, maybe you do start Brock Vandagriff next season and sort of say maybe 2021 might not necessarily be our year either, though I still expect Georgia to be very good. But, by playing Vandagriff, you're saying which Kirby Smart has not done to this point really at any point, this is our guy, full stop. if he starts Brock Vandagriff game 1 and 6 for them to start 2021, that is Kirby Smart firmly committing to a quarterback, saying this is our guy, full stop, for the next however many years. And ultimately, that's something that even that decision to find a guy, stick with a guy, to show unwavering support in him. Because even Jake Fromm, back in 2018 when Fields was here, he never really got that treatment. The only time was 2019 when Stetson Bennett was really the only backup Georgia had. So Georgia had no choice but to believe in Jake Fromm as the guy. When they have multiple quarterback options, which they had this season, they had in 2018, they had in 2017, they're going to have again in 2021. I would like to see Kirby Smart go in and just fully commit to a quarterback. Say, this is our guy. You look, that's what Lincoln Riley does. That's what he did with Jalen Hurts when they brought in Spencer Rattler. That's what he did with Spencer Rattler this year. When you have a quarterback, and I know Kirby and some of you want to, he, in the past, has been praised for sort of treating the quarterback position like he would, say, outside linebacker, wide receiver, running back. Ultimately, I do think the quarterback position is a position that has to just be treated differently in this day and age. I think a big reason Ohio State got Justin Fields was because they committed to him being the guy before he'd even showed up on campus in there when he transfer portaled in there. And that sort of belief, it's paid off. Justin Fields has been great at Ohio State, and I won't talk about him a whole lot longer here because I can tell not always people like him. So you sort of go from there. VTW brings up Campbell potentially coming back. I do think I would probably agree with you there. He hasn't been great against Alabama and Florida, and those are ultimately the big money games for him. I think there's actually, from where we were early in the season, I think there's a decent chance he can come back and play a big role and sort of make a leap like we saw DeAndre Baker sort of make a leap that Richard LeCounte was making earlier this year, where you have a good junior year, you sort of know the ins and outs, you've seen everything you need to see, and now you can evolve to the point where you're a true playmaker in that defensive backfield. And ultimately, I think that's something that LeCounte could be. I think Lewis Cine could be that, though Cine right now still in concussion protocol. He is exercising, working out. So it sounds like still up in the air of whether or not he gets cleared to play. I think if he does, he's obviously a starter. I know there was Noah Sheldon thinks both Stokes and Campbell go pro. Stokes, I definitely agree with you on. I think Stokes made himself a good amount of money. And played well from my point of view on Saturday. And I think he's an NFL guy. So Keith Foles, what happened to open competition? Open competition is why, especially at the quarterback position, in my opinion, is why Georgia is where it is right now. It's why Justin Fields ultimately ends up leaving, because you either committed too much, you went too much in between Fromm and Fields in 2018. It's why I believe Newman left. It's why you've seen Dwan Mathis start. It's why you've seen Stetson Bennett start. And that open competition, again, with the quarterback, it's worked so well with everything else Georgia has done. But with quarterback, it's pretty clearly failed. So we'll sort of see where that goes this week. And yeah, Greg Childs, he brings up on Facebook, having Ringo would really help this team. Yeah, you look at those two preseason injuries to Dominic Blaylock and to Keely Ringo. I think certainly having those guys helps this team. I think against Alabama, definitely having Blaylock out there, especially when they were bracketing Kearis Jackson so much, he would have had, I believe, a very big game that day. And then Ringo, with all the injuries they've had, they're starting Major Burns now, which I don't think they had in their plans this season. At safety, I think he was a guy who maybe replaces either Cine, or next year he would have replaced Richard LeCounte. So you're starting some guys there you didn't necessarily expect to play. But again, I think maybe for Major Burns in the long run, that's a good thing for 2021. For Lewis Cine, if he's able to get back on the field, it's a good thing for his future development to play without Richard LeCounte and be a more vocal guy in that secondary. So again, 2020, it stinks. It's not great. Both for Georgia football and just in terms of this year at large. It's not been a great year for almost anyone. So with Georgia, it's moving forward. It's finding out what can you do to get back to that elite place, because ever since Georgia made it to the college football playoff and the national championship game each season, they have taken incremental steps backwards to get farther and farther away from that. 2018, we're toe-to-toe there with Alabama. A few plays go differently in that game. They're back in the college football playoff. 2019, team. Yeah, they still won. They were still good enough to win the SEC East that year. They got played off the field by LSU, and I actually think they would have got, other than Oklahoma, they would have gotten played off the field by Ohio State and Clemson as well. And then this year, it sort of culminates the Florida team, who I'm not calling them elite. I think Alabama's going to have their way with them. If anything, I could see Alabama beating them by more. It'd just be a more higher scoring affair than 41-24. It could be 52 to 31, something along the lines of that. I still don't necessarily believe Florida is there, so we'll ultimately sort of see where it goes. But from now, Kirby Smart, it's clear as day, major problem at the quarterback position, and there's been a bunch of results that have led to this. I'm going to have a story on that coming tomorrow morning. How does Georgia move on? How does Georgia rebuild it back up and get that quarterback position back to where it needs to be? Because you look at Alabama, no problem replacing Tua. They still have elite play at that position. Trevor Lawrence goes out. They replace him with DJ Uiagalelei. No real drop-off there. Ohio State goes from Dwayne Haskins, the first-round quarterback I believe they've ever had drafted, 50 touchdowns. They replace him with Justin Fields. They somehow get even better. These elite teams are not just developing and playing elite quarterbacks. They're continuing to play them after they send them off to the NFL. Florida next year, it'll be interesting to see how they go about replacing Kyle Trask, because that's going to, in my opinion, go a long way in determining how successful a program they continue to be. Georgia right now, and my ultimate thing, Jay Fromm was a good quarterback for Georgia. He was not great. I don't believe he was a difference maker, but he was a sort of carry. I believe he was in the same range as Ian Book. He could win you a big game if you needed him to, but he couldn't do it every time. So Georgia loses Fromm, and the quarterback play just falls off a cliff. That cannot happen. And yes, it's a weird offseason with COVID. Todd Monken didn't necessarily get to fully implement his scheme. I don't think we got a truly fair quarterback competition with no spring practice. Obviously disrupts a lot of things. And the injuries, sure, they played a role in losing to Florida on Saturday, but this program is still where it is because of the issues at quarterback. So we'll go a few more minutes here and open up the questions, sort of see where things go there. Let's see. Yeah, Noah Sheldon. Jordan Davis is probably going pro as well, in my opinion. He's probably the best bet, I would say, to be a first-round draft pick. He is a 1 of 1 in this class, and we'll sort of see where they go. Yeah, Zach Hicks brings up, the QB situation is bad when you miss Fromm. I know a lot of people weren't necessarily sad to see him go, but I think it's undeniable that the Georgia quarterback situation would be in a lot better spot this year if he were still here. Chevron Hanna, the Georgia quarterback coach, is now Todd Monken, but he's the third. And again, this necessarily wasn't Todd Monken's doing for why the quarterback position is what it is. Jim Chaney was there. James Coley was there the last 2 years. And I think you look at the difference from the Monken to the Coley offense. It just goes to show how truly bad last year's offense was from just a schematic, getting guys open, because with largely the same players, Todd Monken, I think, has done a much, much better job of getting guys open. You've seen what Kyrus Jackson has been able to do. I believe Dominic Blaylock would have had a big year had he been. Not having the difference between Monken and Coley is pretty jarring. So let's see. Questions, comments, concerns. Playing Missouri this weekend. Levi Thomas, he brings up Azeez Ojulari potentially. I'll be interested to see what he decides to do. I could easily see him coming back next year as well. I could see him going pro. He still leads this team in sacks. He's had, other than the Florida game, a very good and productive year for Georgia. If he chooses to go to pro, I don't know how high he'll get drafted because I don't know how well he's going to test athletically, but he's certainly a draftable NFL football player in my eyes. And he'll be one of the more interesting positions to watch. Philip Hamby brings up, anybody miss Bobo offense? Well, South Carolina's not too thrilled with the Bobo offense right now after losing 48-3 to Texas A&M last week. But ultimately, the days of the Bobo offense seem just very distant from there. Keith Simmons, you bring up I believe you mentioned the 2018 class, but I think you meant 2019 with Norton, Zion Logan, Timon Mitchell. Logue and Norton actually played quite a bit on Saturday, and especially in the second half when they were getting in the game. I thought they did a much better job against the run than what we were seeing in the first half. Vance Nix, why not stick with the run? Zeus was looking good. I mean, the reason was Florida was geared up to stop the running game. They dared Georgia to beat them downfield. Georgia got guys open pretty consistently, and they just couldn't do it. And so that's sort of where it'll be. Hugh Nash, the staff needs to hire a QB developer. So I would probably agree with that, but I actually think Monken could be that guy. It might be that guy for Georgia. I've liked what I've seen from Monken. This quarterback situation and what they have, it's not necessarily what he inherited, but I think you need to give him time to sort of build up and coach up what he wants out of the position. And ultimately, you look at last year, just the James Coley offensive coordinator was sort of just disastrous. Keith Simmons asked, "Do you think I see Dejon Edwards this week?" I don't know. I think we're still gonna Zamir and Kenny and James Cook will see a significant amount of snaps. Kenna Milton's gonna be out a couple of weeks with an MCL sprain, and it really comes down to how healthy Kenny McIntosh is. If he his knee is supposedly healthy now. He traveled for the Florida game. It was more of a hamstring injury that was bothering him. If Kenny's able to go, I think we're going to see him. If not, I think Dijon's going to get snaps. I'll be interested to see what they got out of him. He played him a little bit earlier in the year against Arkansas, against Auburn. I'll be interested to see with where they go from him. Yeah, Hugh Nash, you hit the nail on the head. It's JT or back the rest of the season to sort of see what you have and evaluate there, so that you're not forced to, I believe, throw Brock Vandagriff in there right away. So yeah, ultimately it is what it is. Noah Sheldon, some high praise for Trammell Walltower. He played a good bit on Saturday as well. So not having Jordan Davis, it forced them. Not having Julian Rochester, it forced Georgia to get a little creative there. And obviously the pass defense is what it is. But I thought you had reasons to be encouraged with what you saw from some of those defensive linemen rotating in there. So let's see. We'll do two more good questions. Questions or comments. Barry Waters, do you think Monken stays next year or takes another job? I don't know where he would go. I don't think he's going back to the NFL level. He's certainly not getting asked to be an offensive coordinator. And I don't necessarily know if he gets a job better than what he has right now. I know Southern Miss has an opening. I don't know if he'd necessarily want to go back there, given he left that school on not great terms to go be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. I ultimately believe Monken comes back in another year. It was always, to me, sort of seemed like a 2-year project for him, sort of get where he wanted to go. So we'll be interested to see where he goes. And one, I know everyone brought up the Joe Brady thing, mentioned, why can't he be him? LSU had Joe Burrow play a whole season the year before. He had that experience. They knew what they had in him, and Brady got the most out of him. Monken didn't have that. He didn't have a quarterback that he could trust or really go to, and I think you've seen that. That's why he went with DeJuan after Jamie Newman left. He went to Stetson Bennett after DeJuan proved to be ineffective against Arkansas, and now they're sort of reevaluating where to go with this quarterback situation. I think the reality is that Georgia doesn't, as of right now, without having seen without having seen Beck or Daniels play, Georgia doesn't have its 21 starting quarterback on its roster right now. Crazy Wills has been out for the year. No, it's a AC joint injury in his right shoulder. I don't believe it's a season-ending injury, but he has not practiced or he's not thrown these last 2 days. So it'll be interesting to see. As of right now, I would probably lean towards him not playing, but he could practice tomorrow and Thursday, and we sort of find out where he is. So we'll go one more good question here before heading out. Let's see. Joshua Yeomans says we don't deserve to be in the SEC championship. Yeah, ultimately that's sort of where I was at on Saturday after losing to Florida. That Georgia deserved to lose that game and ultimately did. So, one here, Brian Kephart. Does it frustrate me that Newman will play in the Senior Bowl? No, I'm not frustrated by it. I always sort of expected he'd get a chance to get asked to go play there, given there's a lot of interest around him and what he could potentially do. He was someone who was pretty bigly hyped as a potential first-round quarterback option, and NFL teams want to see what he has. And ultimately, I think he's got to answer some questions on why he chose to opt out when he did, because if COVID was the concern that it was, doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, at least to me anyway, to opt out 2 weeks before the season starts when you're already back on Georgia's campus and you've already gone through practice there. I wouldn't expect him to wear a Georgia helmet or uniform or represent Georgia in any way, but I don't think he should be denied his opportunity. I'll be interested to see what he does, how he plays, how he answers some of those big questions, and sort of go from there. So I think, Brian, it's a good question for me, at least, to sort of end it on. Newman was sort of a talking point today. Kirby Smart was asked about him. It's fair to wonder where this team would be with Newman at quarterback. I can give you some facts. He was absolutely going to be the starter, and given how JT Daniels' knee reacted, I don't believe Daniels is going to be in a position to replace him if Newman even played average, let alone as well as the expectations were for him. So that's sort of, we'll leave it there with that on Jamie Newman. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Tomorrow night you have Jeff Sintel with Before the Hedges. Thursday night we have Cover 4. Friday you have Friday Night Mike, and Mike Griffith is on Monday nights as well with On the Beat, and then Dog Nation Daily every Monday through Friday. My name is Connor Riley. Georgia, as of right now, still set to play Missouri on Saturday. Hopefully that gets to happen. I'm still confident that it does, but look forward to seeing you again around these parts. Keep checking out Dog Nation. I've got a really good story coming tomorrow on just how Georgia got to where it is with this quarterback situation being the mess that it is. So have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Stay safe out there, and go Dogs.